Douglas, you're making news again, not just writing and commenting on the headlines, but in the thick of it, thanks to a rather robust discussion you had on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's been the talk of X and elsewhere for days. There was a clash between yourself and Dave Smith, and you even took on the man who has the biggest audience, the biggest podcast audience in the world, Joe Rogan, on his own show.
I just feel, we should get it out straight away, I feel you've opened the door to quite a lot of people who've now got a big platform who have been throwing out counter-historical stuff of a very dangerous kind.
Douglas, you've had plenty of people praising your performance and agreeing with you, but there has also been criticism from those who say you are trying to silence debate and appealing to authority. You're appealing to the expert class, they say, and the expert class hasn't exactly been reliable of late.
Well, I conceded all of that in the discussion on Joe's podcast. I conceded that experts have got things wrong. Look at COVID and the lab leak. And I also said, I certainly am not shutting down debate. I'm involved in debate, so why would I be shutting it down? What I do believe, and what I think many people have completely failed to absorb, is the fact that just because the expert class has let itself down in places on occasion does not mean that lack of expertise is more desirable than expertise. And it does not mean that that we should just have other ways of knowing about things that can be known about. The counterpart who Joe Rogan brought in for that debate seemed to think that, for instance, not going to a place that you're talking about was in some way a desirable thing. Whereas I, as a journalist, you as a journalist know that if we cover a story in a country, for instance, when you were covering the American election in 2020, as I was, you were in America. Why were you in America? Because you were covering the American elections. And if you'd have been just sitting in Australia covering the American elections, that wouldn't have had the validity that it does if you are in the country you are writing about. I think this is a deliberate misunderstanding by people. And let me very quickly explain why. Joe Rogan is a big MMA guy. I probably know, or you probably know about as much about MMA as I do. You might surprise me, Rita. But if either of us went on his podcast and decided to spend the 3 hours talking about MMA, we would be found out pretty fast as not knowing what we were talking about. And at some point, Joe would cotton on to that. And he would say, I'm sorry, you seem not to know about this subject. Well, that's because it's a subject he knows a lot about. My simple point is that there is something very different happening if a host's platform repeatedly cranks with the same opinion as each other on very, very important questions and do not allow on contrary views, or very rarely. For instance, to not have somebody on who is supportive of Ukraine as opposed to highly, highly critical of Ukraine since 22 seems to me to be a big issue. To say that, for instance, you spent the last 18 months highlighting, promoting, giving a platform to anti-Israel voices, and just never or almost never or accidentally giving a platform to anyone who's anti-Hamas and pro-Israel, seems to me to be a major failing. And I just wanted to call it out because it's something I see. And I think a lot of other people see it and are equally concerned about it. But as I say, on issues like MMA fighting or anything else, people would notice there was something strange going on if guests were turning up who didn't know what they were talking about. And I submit that when you get pseudo-historians on talking, for instance, about Churchill and claiming that Adolf Hitler wasn't openly anti-Semitic in the 1930s, but that Winston Churchill was the cause of the Second World War, I would submit you are entering very dangerous territory if you leave such ideas out there and leave them out unchallenged. So I'm all for the debate, But what I see in certain realms of the right is not actually a debate.
Now let's go to the UK, where the Keir Starmer government seems preoccupied with a Netflix drama, Adolescence, and is forming policies inspired by this fictional TV series. Meanwhile, Douglas, they're watering down reviews into real misogyny, into real rape culture that saw thousands of girls, of young women abused in the grooming gang scandal.
Yes, this is so typical of the British government. Kemi Badenoch was questioned on the weekend shows once again as to why she hasn't watched this Netflix show, as if it's compulsory viewing, and you know that it should lead government policy and so on. It is ridiculous. I thought the drama was highly specious, as I think I mentioned to you before. But yes, it's a complete cover. I mean, Jess Phillips announced, who's meant to be the minister who looks after women's rights, among other things, and she announced just before a recess the other day that actually the government was shelving its minimal inquiries into some of the rape gang scandals in Britain. And she announces that, and then, and her side says things like, that the opposition raising issues of, who the victims are, the fact that most of the victims in those grooming gangs were subjected to the rape and tortures they were because they were white, that mentioning that is in some way Islamophobic or racist and so on. This is so typical of British politics these days, as indeed other countries whose politics is being kind of grabbed by this agenda. You pass over real crimes and you talk about non-crimes. You ignore unbelievable things that have actually happened in your country, and you fixate on a fictional Netflix drama. I wish I was surprised, but this is so Labour Party.
It is, and it is absolutely mind-boggling how this isn't a bigger outrage in the UK. There aren't people marching in the streets every weekend over this issue. It is rape and abuse and torture, human trafficking on an enormous scale across the country. And so many people who seem to be very much obsessed with women's rights and human rights pay it scant attention. Before you go, Douglas, I've got to ask you about John Oliver. He's upsetting people in the US and beyond with another lengthy rant about trans athletes. Apparently males have no real advantage and, women should just cop it. And those making an issue about this are the real villains. He also seems to be an authority on what happens in girls' bathrooms.
Last year, for instance, Peyton McNabb tweeted a video of her confronting a trans woman with the caption, "A man using the girls' bathroom at Western Carolina University, unreal," which is really nasty. And for the record, ambushing strangers just minding their own business is not what girls' bathrooms are for. Girls' bathrooms are for gassing each other up, making best friends in 30 seconds, complimenting tops, tucking in tags and zipping up dresses while one girl says, "OMG, that lipstick looks so good on you."
I don't know about you, Douglas, but I found that not only spectacularly unfunny, but also a little bit creepy. I mean, what is he on about? And what is this preoccupation with almost gaslighting the audience about the real advantage that male bodies enjoy over female bodies? That's why we have two categories. It's not just for the to double the viewing audience. There's a reason why women cannot compete fairly with men.
Yes. It's John Oliver, I said to you before. I mean, it's so strange because the guy started out as a comedian, and he just doesn't seem very funny. He talks like a sort of preacher at a pulpit, berating his audience in a congregation of old. I mean, it's very strange. He's not entertaining. He's telling, and certainly for me at any rate, it's not something I love in my comedy. But as you said, there's something a little creepy about it as well, because he's also, I think what he's doing is he's willing to go absolutely anywhere to defend a lie, which is at best cracked, I think, at the moment. This idea that men should tell women that they should allow men into women's bathrooms is kind of fallen apart of late, and it's very unpopular with the public, outside of a small minority of people who are obsessed with the idea that until a trans woman, as they call them, can go into a women's bathroom, nobody will be free and there'll be no justice in the world. But it is a strange thing. But as I say, strangest is that he's hanging on to this idea that this is the rights issue or something, after the rest of America has effectively said in the last election, we want to get beyond this stuff. Please, God, let us just move on and stop pretending this is the big issue and a complex issue, and one that is so difficult we can't work it out unless you agree that all trans men are men and all trans women are women, and that's it, and just repeat the dogma of the time. It's so extraordinary to see. So it really, John Oliver is being very 2020 there. And he should check the date of the diary, because you'll find that he's been in something of a coma.